In the late 1980s, Japan's government created an official term. It sounds more like folklore than medicine. The term is shinrin-yoku. It means forest bathing. This isn't hiking, it isn't exercise, it's simply being in a forest, standing there, breathing. 20 years later, a doctor named Ching Li decided to test this in a lab. He drew blood from healthy adults. He tested them before a forest trip. Then he tested them again after. He was looking at one specific immune cell. It's called a natural killer cell, or NK cell. Your body uses these cells to find and destroy two things: virus-infected cells and early cancer cells. Here's what he found. NK cell activity jumped after a single forest trip, and in some people, that boost was still there a full month later. That's not a typo. One weekend in a forest. A month-long immune effect. In the next few minutes, I'll show you three things. First, what trees are actually releasing into the air. Second, what the science does and doesn't prove. Third, why this might matter more as you get older. The chemical you've been breathing your whole life. Here's the compound behind this effect. It's called a phytoncide. The word comes from Russian. It roughly means exterminated by the plant. Trees make these airborne chemicals. They use them to fight off insects, fungi, and bacteria. It's part of the tree's own immune system. The main chemicals in this group are called terpenes. Two common ones are alpha-pinene and limonene. You've smelled these your whole life. You just didn't know their names. Think about the sharp smell of a pine forest, or the citrus scent inside a cedar closet, or that smell that hits you the moment you step off a trail into thick woods. That smell is phytoncides. They're released into the air in real, measurable amounts. Dr. Li didn't stop at measuring forest air. He ran a second experiment indoors. This time, there was no forest, no hiking, no fresh air. Nothing changed except one thing. He vaporized phytoncide extract from hinoki cypress trees. Then he had people breathe it in a hotel room for 3 days. That's it. No forest at all. The result? NK cell activity went up in this group too. The increase was smaller than the forest trip group, but it was still real and still measurable. Why does this detail matter so much? Because it helps answer an obvious question. Maybe people just feel better when they walk outside. And maybe feeling better is what boosts the immune system, not any specific chemical in the air. The indoor test doesn't fully settle this question. It's a smaller study. It's still early-stage research. But it does point towards something important. The chemical itself seems to be doing at least part of the work. It's not just the walking. It's not just the scenery. It's not just a change of routine. Since Dr. Li's first studies in the mid-2000s, other researchers have repeated this work. Different labs, different countries. The pattern keeps showing up. In fact, a 2024 review pulled together data from 8 separate studies. The pattern was consistent across all of them. Forest bathing is reliably linked to 3 things: higher NK cell activity, better inflammation markers, and lower cortisol, which is your main stress hormone. What's actually happening inside your body? So how does breathing a plant's defense chemicals make your immune system stronger? Researchers have found a few mechanisms, and unlike a lot of wellness claims, this one has real science behind it. Mechanism 1. Direct immune activation. Researchers didn't just watch people in forests. They took specific phytoncides into a lab. Then they applied these chemicals directly to human NK cells in a petri dish. Several wood essential oils increased NK cell activity right away. They also boosted 2 specific proteins, perforin and granulysin. These are the actual tools NK cells use to punch through and destroy damaged or infected cells. This is the strongest piece of evidence in this entire field. Why? Because it removes almost every other variable. There's no forest, no walking, no fresh air, no change of scenery, just the chemical, touching cells directly, and the cells respond. Mechanism 2. A drop in stress hormones. After forest trips, researchers measured 2 stress hormones in urine, adrenaline and noradrenaline. These are the hormones behind your fight or flight response. After time in a forest, these hormone levels consistently went down. Why does this matter? Because we already know something important. Chronic stress hormones suppress NK cell activity. This happens through well-studied pathways in the body. So part of this immune boost might be simple stress relief. Imagine a foot pressing down on a brake pedal. Stress is that foot. When the stress goes away, the brake releases. The immune system speeds back up. Both this mechanism and the direct chemical effect are likely happening at the same time. Mechanism 3. Air ions and microbes. Forests create high levels of negatively charged air ions. This effect is especially strong near moving water, waterfalls, and thick tree canopy. Forest air is also different in another way. It carries a much wider range of microbes than indoor air or city air. Some researchers connect this to something called the old friends hypothesis. Here's the basic idea. Human immune systems evolved over millions of years. During that time, we were constantly exposed to a wide range of natural microbes. Now, modern life is different. We live indoors. We live in sanitized spaces. Some researchers think this may leave our immune systems understimulated. This might explain part of the rise in inflammatory and allergic conditions we see today. Mechanism 4. A calmer nervous system. Several studies measured something called heart rate variability during forest exposure. This measurement tells researchers which part of your nervous system is in charge. During forest time, people consistently shifted toward what's called parasympathetic dominance. In simple terms, this is your rest and digest mode. It's the opposite of fight or flight. This shift matters beyond just feeling calm. Separate research links this same nervous system shift to better heart health over time. It's also linked to lower overall inflammation in the body. So here's the full picture. Phytoncides directly activate immune cells. Lower stress hormones remove a brake on the immune system. More microbial exposure may support long-term immune balance. And a calmer nervous system supports the whole body. 4 separate mechanisms. 4 separate types of evidence. All pointing the same direction. It's worth pausing on why that first mechanism matters so much. Correlational studies have a weakness. Healthier, less stressed people might simply choose to go for forest walks more often. That would make forest walkers look healthier without the forest actually causing anything. But the Petri dish experiment sidesteps this problem completely. There's no walking involved. There's no scenery. There's no way for a healthier person to choose this experiment over another person. The chemical touches the cells directly, outside the body, and the cells respond. That's much stronger evidence than simply watching what happens to people who happen to like forest walks. The part that's still genuinely uncertain. I want to be honest with you here. This research is good, but it isn't fully settled science. Let's be precise about where the real uncertainty sits. Most of these studies are small. Many involve a few dozen people, not thousands. Many of them don't have a proper comparison group. For example, almost none of them compare a forest walk to, say, a walk down a city street of the same length. Why does that matter? Because it makes it harder to separate two different things. One is a forest-specific chemical effect. The other is simply this. Any outdoor walk feels good, and feeling good reduces stress on its own. A major 2024 review flagged this exact problem. Most studies in this field used a design where people walked through a forest. That means they were getting exercise and a change of scenery at the same time as the phytoncide exposure. The walking itself is a real confounding factor. It hasn't been fully separated from the airborne chemical in most real-world forest studies. There's also a question about how long the effect actually lasts. Remember that month-long boost in NK activity after a single weekend? That number comes from a small number of studies. It hasn't been repeated at that same scale across enough independent labs. It's a genuinely interesting pattern. Researchers have seen it more than once. But it's not yet the kind of number you'd see written into an official medical guideline. And here's the most important point of this whole video. Higher NK cell activity for a few weeks is a real, measurable thing. But that is a very different claim from saying forest bathing prevents cancer or forest bathing extends your life. Some of the excitement around this topic, especially outside the original Japanese research teams, has stretched an honest finding into a much bigger claim than the data supports. Here's the honest version of the story. A specific immune marker reliably goes up after time in a forest. There are at least 4 plausible mechanisms behind it, and population-level cancer statistics from heavily forested parts of Japan are suggestive. They are not proof. Why this might matter more as you get older. Now here's the part that connects directly to aging, which is what this channel focuses on. NK cell activity is one of several immune functions that naturally decline with age. Researchers have a name for this: immunosenescence. It's a long word for a simple idea. Your immune system slows down as you get older. Because of this decline, older adults are generally more vulnerable to infections. Some research also suggests weaker immune surveillance against early cancer changes, partly because NK cell number and function drop with age. So think about what this means. An activity that reliably pushes NK cell activity upward, even temporarily, might be counteracting a specific, age-related weakness. It's not just a small bonus for an already healthy system. It may be filling in a gap that naturally opens up over time. Several of the studies in this field actually focused on older adults and immune-compromised patients directly, including cancer patients undergoing treatment. Why those groups specifically? Because that's exactly where an NK cell boost would matter most in real, clinical terms. Not just on paper, in actual patient outcomes. There's a second benefit worth mentioning here too. Several of the mechanisms behind this effect are ones you've already heard about on this channel. Lower stress hormones, better nervous system balance, moderate physical activity from walking. These same mechanisms show up in our earlier videos about heart health and longevity in general. A regular walk through a forest isn't a single-purpose activity. It's stacking several separately studied health benefits into one simple habit. It's also worth explaining why Japan keeps showing up in this research specifically. Japan's National Forestry Agency actively promotes shinrin-yoku as public health policy. Japan also has decades of tracked data connecting regional cancer rates to land use. That combination makes Japan a good place to study this question. But it also means most of the big population-level data comes from one country. That country has its own diet, culture, and healthcare system layered on top of the results. The next step for this field is clear. Researchers need to repeat these findings in different countries, different diets, different healthcare access, different genetics. Until that happens, the population-level cancer claim isn't as solid as the lab-based NK cell findings already are. What to actually do with this? So what should you actually do with this information? Not move to a forest. Just specific, doable steps. 1. Pick dense, mixed forests over scattered city parks. The research ties this effect to phytoncide concentration. That concentration is higher in thick, mixed forests with conifers and broadleaf trees. It's lower in a manicured park with a few scattered trees. If you have access to both, choose the denser trail. You'll likely get more of the specific chemical this research is about. That said, any green space still gives you stress relief and movement benefits on its own. 2. Spend more time there, not less. Most of the studies showing the biggest NK cell changes used several hours across 2 or 3 days, not 15-minute walks. A short forest walk is still good for you. You'll still get stress relief and movement benefits, but it's simply not the exact protocol that produced the biggest immune measurements in the research. 3. Think about season and time of day. Trees, especially conifers, release more phytoncides in warmer conditions. They also release more during daylight hours, when they're actively photosynthesizing under mild heat. A summer afternoon in a coniferous forest likely exposes you to far more phytoncides than the same walk on a cold winter morning. 4. Bring a version of it indoors, if a forest isn't realistic for you. Remember the indoor experiment? Hinoki cypress oil, diffused in a room, produced a real, if smaller, NK cell increase in a controlled trial. This doesn't guarantee that an essential oil diffuser gives you the full forest effect. The concentrations and chemical blends are different from real forest air, but it's a reasonable, low-cost way to get a partial version of this exposure on days when a forest isn't an option. 5. Don't skip the actual walking. Since several studies can't fully separate the chemical exposure from the physical activity, here's the practical takeaway. Don't just sit still in a forest and breathe. Walk through it. The movement itself is very likely doing real, independent work, alongside whatever the phytoncides are contributing. 6. Treat this as a supplement, never a substitute. If you're managing an existing immune condition, going through cancer treatment, or dealing with a compromised immune system, this research has studied forest bathing as something you add alongside standard treatment, never as a replacement for it. This is worth discussing with your own doctor. Don't treat a nature walk as a substitute for anything you're currently prescribed. Closing. Nobody prescribes a walk in the woods the way they prescribe an immune support medication or a round of chemotherapy support drugs. There's no billing code for phytoncide exposure. There probably won't be one anytime soon, but this research is more solid than most of what gets called nature therapy today. It has a specific, named chemical class behind it. It has lab experiments that isolate that chemical and test it directly on human immune cells, not just surveys asking people how they felt after a walk. It's been repeated by multiple independent research teams over more than 15 years, and it's now been pulled together in formal reviews, not just resting on one single study. It's also refreshingly simple. You don't need a permit. You don't need a subscription. You don't need a prescription. You need access to a forest, a few hours of your time, and a willingness to treat that time as a real health practice, not just a nice, optional extra. Think about the tree standing beside that trail for a second. It isn't doing anything for your benefit. It's simply defending itself, the same way it has for millions of years. It doesn't care whether anyone happens to be walking past, breathing in the byproduct of that defense. That indifference is actually part of what makes this finding credible. Nobody designed this compound with human health in mind. It's simply a coincidence of biochemistry. Scientists verified it in a lab, and it happens to line up with something your immune system can use. There's a pattern across the videos on this channel about aging and long life. None of the strongest findings so far came from something manufactured, patented, or sold in a specialty store. First, it was a belief about your own aging. Then, a dog resting at the foot of your bed. Now, a chemical that a tree was already releasing into the air, for its own completely unrelated reasons, long before anyone thought to measure what it was doing to the humans walking past. The research keeps landing on ordinary things, but once you study them carefully enough, they turn out to be far less ordinary than they first appeared. If this changed how you think about your next walk outside, subscribe. Until next time, take good care of yourself